All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back on the program to continue the saga with the Texas Republican Senate primary. President Trump came out and stated that he would soon be endorsing one of the two candidates, of course, the incumbent RINO and never Trumper, John Cornyn, or MAGA challenger and patriot Ken Paxton, since neither could, of course, attain more than 50% of the primary vote. And he expects whoever does not get endorsed to then drop out of the race. Paxton later said that he wouldn't drop out even if Trump doesn't endorse him, as John Cornyn has, of course, failed to adequately represent Texans. Of course, Ken Paxton is a Texan patriot. So Senate Majority Leader John Thune encouraged Trump to endorse pro-amnesty John Cornyn, and the rumors are essentially that John Thune is using the SAVE Act, a policy, by the way, that is supported by 80% of Americans, as a kind of leverage over Trump, essentially extorting him into endorsing this Cornyn character. So basically, he's saying he's not going to pass the SAVE Act unless Trump personally intervenes to endorse, literally this establishment RINO pro-amnesty, called the 21st century the Indian century, which is literally one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life. I know there's an argument for the Chinese century. There's an argument for the American century. Obviously, you're invoking people who are not even in the conversation. This is the participation trophy of a lifetime. And of course, this is exactly occurring as Indians are increasingly taking over in Texas, establishing their sort of ethnic beachhead, just as every other immigrant group has done in this country. He supported Biden-era gun control. There's a laundry list of horrible things, which you exactly don't really get away with in Texas, or at least you shouldn't. You shouldn't be expected to be able to ride off into the sunset having had that kind of political involvement in issues which are completely opposite to what your voters would come to expect. And so Paxton claimed that he would only drop out if the SAVE Act is passed. And he said that the Save America Act is the most important bill the U.S. Senate could ever pass. True. He says he's committed to helping President Trump get it done. I would consider dropping out of the race if Senate leadership agrees to lift the filibuster and pass the Save America Act. And yeah, John Cornyn is a coward. He's refused to support abolishing the filibuster to pass this bill. And so now fake news reporters in the establishment are trying to destroy me, Ken Paxton, the guy, me, with misinformation. The truth is clear. No one has been more loyal to Donald Trump than me. He fought the stolen election in 2020. He was at Mar-a-Lago when he announced in 2024. And he was standing with him in New York in the face of the lawfare. For the good of our country and for the good of passing President Trump's agenda, I'm determined to help him get this done. This is absolutely true. It's one thing to be on the bandwagon now, to be back on the Trump train after things were a little bit up in the air going into 2024. Ken Paxton was never that guy. I mean, Donald Trump, and I've said this a million times, was bleeding allies in 2022. He was bleeding donors. People were looking for the next lily pad. They thought it might be Ron DeSantis. They thought it might be Nikki Haley, LOL. A lot of people thought it might be Vivek Ramaswamy, LOL. There are very few people who stood by Donald Trump in this time. Charlie Kirk was one of those people. Ken Paxton, one of those people. It's a short list of people who actually remain loyal to President Trump. And Ken Paxton, as he articulates here, is not loyal to President Trump just because President Trump is President Trump. That's certainly part of it. It is because he's loyal to the cause which Donald Trump represents, which is why he even offers to say, hey, I'll drop out. That's fine. This doesn't have to be about me. I will drop out on the condition that the SAVE Act is actually passed, because it is the most important piece of legislation that could ever be passed, which happens to be the case. And so this is just good politics. It's okay, you want to play hardball. You want to throw some sand in my gears, impede my career. I certainly would like this position, but I don't have to have it. I don't have to have it. You don't want me to have it. You want it. Fine. Do what I would do then were I in your position. Give me what I want, which is to say what the country needs, and it's yours. Do the right thing, and it's yours. I don't have to be that guy. I would like to be that guy because somebody has to be that guy, but I don't need to do this. Very reminiscent, actually, of how Trump used to describe any presidential ambitions. I don't want to do it, but if no one else does, I'll be that guy. So John Thune has essentially been an extremely ineffective Senate leader. He's passed the fewest bills ever. He's blocked Trump's recess appointments, generally just slowed down the administration, right? He's failed on the SAVE Act despite promising repeatedly to pass it. This is literally the most important thing that could ever be done, literally ever. This is one of the pillars that we talked about in November 2024. Remember the pillars? Do you remember that conversation talking about how we actually go about defeating the Leviathan that is the global left? It was focused on things like immigration. Obviously, we have that. The BBB, the largest increase in immigration enforcement funding literally ever. New ICE agents, new facilities, mass deportation technology. This is moving along. It's not perfect, but it is moving along. And it's clear that the administration is committed to moving it along because they used so much of their political capital on the BBB. twisting arms, getting stuff done. That was the BBB. Okay, cool. Pillar 1 in progress, right? What's next? Elections. That is the SAVE Act. That is what this is. Voter ID, ensuring free and fair elections, whatever you want to call it, making sure the people who are casting votes are people who we would want to be casting votes. This is leveling the playing field. This is working within our democratic system. Like, people are always saying, oh, you think you're going to vote your way out of this? Like, yeah, like probably. Actually, you know, that's kind of how we got into this situation in the first place, is because of elections, right? A manipulation of who's doing the voting, a manipulation of where those people are coming from, whether they're actually American, whether they're foreigners. You can actually solve a lot of our problems through controlling that, for making sure that the people who are voting are actually exercising ID, right? The same way that you would when you do literally anything else in this country. That is a way of disrupting how the left has actually been able to consolidate their power, expand their power. Immigration was the same thing. They are changing the composition of the country, which is to say changing the people voting in elections, because they understand that elections are what legitimizes their power. In a democratic system, which, like, yes, that is what we are operating under. I know. That is how this works. Things that happen are considered to be just and legitimate because the public, well, I voted for this, therefore this is more or less okay. This is more or less acceptable. Even if you don't support the particular candidate, the fact that an election itself was even held is something that convinces people that our processes are more or less legitimate. So it's not enough to say elections don't matter. What do you think? You're going to vote your way out of this? Okay, clearly the people winning think they're going to vote their way out of this. Clearly they think that voting is extremely important. So do we know better than them, the people who have lost everything forever? We know better. We have some other option. No, clearly you have to play hardball. Clearly you have to bring the fight to where it's happening. And yeah, that's why we went after immigration. That's why we're going after elections. And by the way, we abandoned those two hills to go focus on our gay little pet projects. What do you think is going to happen? They're going to get right back in, business as usual, resume open borders, resume open elections, and then we lose forever, permanently. It's done. They have healed. They have covered and fortified every exposed flank, which Donald Trump, by the grace of God, has been able to capitalize on in the past 11 years. That's not going to happen again. We are all out of billionaires with charisma and household name recognition. We had one. We're all out. No one else is coming. This is our one shot. The boss fight has been triggered. So, yeah, what are you doing? What are you doing? This is beyond coalitional politics. Call the bluff. Call the bluff. Nobody who is treating this like a game of footsie is ever going to be committed to our project anyway. You know, we need to show people that this is just how things are going. This is not a fluke. We must continue our assimilation into normal politics, which is to say rewarding good behavior, providing benefits to people who practice good behavior. Because right now, what these people are doing is not some ideological commitment to being a pain in the ass. I mean, I'm sure that does exist to some extent, but what they are doing is simply responding to the incentives in front of them. The incentives in front of them say, if you are an impediment to the Trump administration, you will be rewarded. If you are an ally to the Trump administration, the second the Trump administration ceases to be, we are going to get back into power and we are going to crush you. We are going to make you look like a piece of gum on the sidewalk. You will be sticking to the bottom of shoes as people walk in comical fashion with you as this little mass of gum, and then only your eyes visible as you continue to be stretched and, you know, like in cartoons. That is what we are going to do to Stephen Miller, to all of Trump's allies, anybody who has ever at any point assisted meaningfully with the Trump political cause. That is what has happened. So that is the menu right now for incentives. At best, you are rewarded for being an impediment. If you choose to actually participate, we are going to destroy you. And by the way, here's all of our propaganda about why you're losing and should be demoralized and why we're going to win anyway. All of this stuff to convince people who are maybe on the fence, haven't quite picked a camp, could be useful in either camp. All of that is signaling to high quality people to let them know, hey, you know how you're a high quality person? You know how you have other options? You don't need this. This is a big mess. This is drama. This is really going to fuck your shit up. You should actually just check out. You should go focus on anything else, and you certainly should not throw your weight behind the Trump cause, because we're going to punish you. And in fact, we'll even give you some gives if you choose to just wear the red tie and act as an impediment to that. So we need to do away with that. It's not personal. This is just how politics works. It is to say you have to recognize that all these people are doing is responding to incentives. You have to remove the incentives away from these people that will reward them for bad behavior and punish them for good behavior. And you have to flip it, because that is what they are doing. They are simply responding to this, and they are understanding that they are rewarded for subversion, or at least they will not be punished for subversion, and they are implicitly betting on Democrats retaking power and then doing as they will. We want to stop them from retaking power, doing as they will. We need to keep going after the columns, and we need to be able to actually reward our people and establish these kinds of, what do they call them, patronage networks for this kind of behavior, for this kind of political action. Because absent that, all you're going to see is all of these apparatchiks continue to fall in line with an establishment that they align themselves with and actually share the view towards the Trump administration of it just basically being a fluke, an irritant, which eventually will work itself out of the body. That's not good. We are assimilating to being the new normal. This is how things are going now. We're not going to tolerate behavior like this. As anybody who really believed themselves to be the new normal, the permanent incumbent, no one would tolerate behavior like that, and so we shouldn't either.